a lot of people are talking about possible tension between Eddie Hearn and Adam Smith, and I guess the rest of Eddie Hearn's bosses at Sky. And Adam Smith didn't deny in this interview, I think it's in this interview, and he's done other interviews with various different YouTube channels over the past week or so, Adam Smith. And he hasn't denied that they're trying to put Eddie Hearn under pressure to deliver better for them at the moment. And in one of the interviews, he said he's going to go right now and put some pressure on Eddie Hearn. I've never heard Adam Smith talk like this before publicly about putting pressure on Eddie Hearn. Adam Smith also said that we argue all the time. This is what he said about Hearn, that we argue all the time. Adam Smith said that he wanted Joshua Buatsi to headline the card last night, which was actually headlined by Ted Cheeseman. So there does appear to be conflict there. There does appear to be some dissatisfaction in terms of on Sky's side with the job that Eddie Hearn is doing, at least with the domestic boxing. And there has to be some frustration, I guess, with Sky, some disappointment with the fact that Eddie Hearn didn't manage to deliver an Anthony Joshua pay-per-view on April 13th. It's business. And in business, when you're dealing with businessmen of the level of the bosses at Sky, and look, Adam Smith is the head of Sky Boxing, but he's got his own bosses above him. You know, there's Barney Francis and whatnot. These are the people who are going to be putting pressure on Adam Smith. And if they're putting pressure on Adam Smith is going to put pressure on Eddie Hearn. And Adam Smith looks like someone who really loves boxing. Okay, he's been around boxing a long time. He was working as a commentator and all that kind of business. But when you look at Barney Francis just looks like a corporate guy. Like, apparently Barney Francis is a big boxing fan. But when I saw those few interviews that Barney Francis did, I think with IFL and a couple other people, he is just such a hard-faced businessman. He's so corporate. That doesn't look like the kind of person who really gives a damn about friendships or anything like that. He is interested in the bottom line. And the bottom line is, are we making a profit? And are our profits increasing? Have we future-proofed our our boxing department side of the business? And are we producing new talent who are going to be pay-per-view stars in the future? So when the old crop retire, they can be replaced and we can continue building and increasing profits. You see, businesses, a lot of businesses, they're not happy to just stay at a certain level, making money at a certain level, even if it's good money. They want to keep growing and growing and growing and growing. Even when it's unrealistic to do that, that's what a lot of businesses demand. And if you can't deliver that for them, you're going to get it in the neck. And so there does appear to be pressure, genuine pressure from what I've seen here from Adam Smith on Eddie Hearn to deliver. And there does appear to be genuine dissatisfaction with what he's delivering at the moment for Sky Sports. And, you know, whatever he's done in the past, they don't care about that. They care about what he's doing right now and what he's going to do in the future. And it kind of reminds me of the situation with Frank Warren, because, you know, some people say I'm too harsh on Frank Warren and he's a legend of British boxing and he's put on so many amazing shows. Yeah, Frank Warren put on great shows in the 1990s. I remember his shows very, very well. Frank Warren was the man in British boxing in the 1990s. Frank Warren was the number one, and Barry Hearn, Eddie's dad, was not only the number two, he was way far behind Frank Warren in the 1990s. Particularly from the mid to late 1990s, Warren was head and shoulders above Barry Hearn. But now the situation in recent years has reversed. So it's not about hating Warren or any of this kind of business. It's just about being real. But for all I know, for all we know, the situation might reverse again, and maybe Frank Warren can bring back the glory days. Maybe he can recapture his position as the #1 promoter in British boxing. He's still got a long way to go to get there, but maybe he can do it. We'll see. Point being, this is the business side of boxing, the ebbs and flows, the pressure from the television bosses, etc., etc. And Eddie Hearn has to learn to deal with this. He's under pressure in the United States to deliver for the zone. He's under pressure in the UK from Sky to deliver for them. Can he cope with it? We'll see if Eddie Hearn cracks, if he calls it a day. Maybe he's bitten off more than he can chew. Maybe he's taken on too many challenges for himself, and he needs to slow down a little bit. Maybe his ambition has got the better of him. We'll see. But he does have a contract with Sky that goes on for several more years. But in business, contracts can be ended early. There are clauses in contracts. Sometimes people can mutually agree to terminate a contract. I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but I do feel like we are, and I've mentioned this in recent videos, I do feel like we are going to get, I don't want to call it a Great Depression, but we're going to get a slump in the popularity of boxing after these current stars, the current top guys in particularly the heavyweight division, have had their run. I think we're going to get a slump in boxing, and one of the reasons is because of the issues that amateur boxing is having. That there's the very strong possibility that there will be no amateur boxing at the next Olympics. That is going to hurt professional boxing, because you're not going to get the same amount of talent coming through. There's not going to be as much money going into amateur boxing if people can't get in the Olympics. So, yeah, I think we are headed for a slump in boxing after this current crop of stars have had their run, and that's why we need to enjoy it while it's here. That we shouldn't be praying for the downfall of this promoter or that promoter. We should be hoping that there is as many promoters as possible, and that we get as many fights as possible, as many different platforms as possible showing boxing. That's what we need. We need to enjoy it while it's here, because it won't be here forever. We are in a golden era, not only of British boxing, not only of heavyweight boxing, but to some extent, boxing in general. I mean, you look what Heyman is doing with Fox, and to some degree Showtime, with his PBC brand. Look at the purses he's paying fighters. That's not going to last forever, people. When he's paying the Charlos and all these kind of people really, really big purses for relatively routine defenses, it's not going to last. So the fighters need to get it while the getting is good. They need to enjoy it. The fans need to enjoy what we got right now. And Eddie Hearn, I guess he is trying to enjoy the success he's having, but he's under a lot of pressure. So that's my take on it in terms of Eddie Hearn and Adam Smith. It's a case of companies being greedy, I guess. They look at numbers. They don't look at what Eddie Hearn used to do for them. They look at, okay, our numbers are down from last year. We're still making an enormous profit, but we don't like the fact that the numbers are going down. So either sort it out, Eddie, or we'll have to get somebody else in. Anyway, let me know how you guys feel about this in the comment section below. Do you think Eddie Hearn can last the course of his Sky contract? Do you think he's gonna fall by the wayside? And one thing I have to say as well is that Eddie Hearn has been accused by a lot of people of pushing his fighters into certain fights before they're ready. Hearn did say he was gonna be more aggressive with the fights that he wanted to push fighters into. He did say this about a year ago, maybe over a year ago, that this is the way they were gonna go. That they were gonna have to, put fighters in 50-50 fights and test them and see whether they're good enough. And if they're not good enough, you have to rebound and come back. And he's being criticized for this because, Lewis Ritson has lost, Ted Cheeseman's just lost, etc., etc. And people are saying, well, you see, Eddie Hearn's fighters are all hype jobs and all this kind of business. So on one hand, he's going to get criticized, as he previously was, for protecting fighters, apparently. And now he's getting criticized because he's sticking them in too early and, these are typical Matchroom hype jobs and all this kind of business. Look, it's boxing. You are going to lose fights, right? Those people, and I kind of agree with Eddie Hearn to a certain extent. If you're good enough, you will make it through this process. If you're not good enough, you won't make it through. I know that Eddie Hearn does put a certain amount of pressure on some camps to step up, but ultimately it is down to the fighters and it is down to their management teams in terms of which fights they choose to take. So, you can't put it all on Hearn, but as I say, if you're good enough, you make it. If you're not good enough, you won't. AJ is a good example because AJ was moved very fast in his career. I know people love to criticize him, but look who AJ fought in his first 22 fights. Compare it to who Fury fought in his first 22 fights. Compare it to who Wilder fought in his first 22 fights, and you will see that AJ was moved very quickly. AJ was good enough. So moving him that fast didn't backfire. They are trying to follow not the same model with the other Matchroom prospects, but a similar model, moving them very fast. Lawrence Okolie has been moved very fast, has he not? Yes, he has. I know he just had a insignificant fight on the Cheeseman undercard last night, but up until the Matayaskin fight, Okolie's been moved very quickly. Josh Kelly's been moved at a decent pace so far. And there are several other Matchroom prospects. Even O'Hara Davis, when he was with Matchroom, he was moved relatively quickly. So if you're good enough, you'll make it. If you're not good enough, you won't make it. And it is a tough situation for the fighters. And maybe it would be better if certain fighters could be built a bit more slowly. 100%. I agree with that. That the certain fighters cannot be moved at this pace, and it might be detrimental for certain fighters to be moved at such a fast pace. But at the same time, there is pressure on Hearn to deliver 50-50 fights. If you look at Frank Warren cards, a lot of the time he's sticking these guys in with totally overmatched opposition. And I know Eddie Hearn does it on his cards too. That's part of the process of building up prospects. But with Warren, for example, he's got Anthony Yard, who, yes, he only had 12 amateur fights and all this kind of business, but now he's, pushing in on 20 fights, and he still hasn't fought anybody with a pulse. Warren has fighters out there like that. With Eddie Hearn, does he have fighters like that, pushing 20 fights and he ain't fought nobody with a pulse? Not so much. And look at all the criticism that Yard gets for his level of opposition. So it's a difficult balancing act, because if you move a fighter slowly as they move in Anthony Yard, you're going to get slated by the fans for protecting him. But if you move a fighter quickly, like Cheeseman, Ritson, etc., you're going to get slated if they lose. You can't win, actually, a lot of the time as a boxing promoter. I think you have to take it on a case-by-case basis, and you have to bear in mind that everybody's going to lose. Look at James DeGale when he fought George Groves. That was a Frank Warren show. James DeGale lost, and he was a Frank Warren fighter. Should we slate Frank Warren for that, for putting DeGale in with Groves and having DeGale lose? I don't think so. a loss is not the end of the world. If you look at Eddie Hearn's recent fighters like Lewis Ritson lost. It wasn't the end of the world. Ted Cheeseman just lost the fight. Again, that's not the end of the world. He did take far too much punishment, and he fought a pretty reckless fight, but he can come back from that. He's 22 or 23 years old. He can learn, and the guy he was in with fought excellently. So, we have to bear in mind that people are going to lose. We shouldn't expect every fighter to be moved along at a snail's pace until they pick up a world title from the weakest champion in the division, and they get their world title shot at an absolute dead cert who they're definitely going to beat. Is that how you want every single fighter to be moved along? Again, and it's not just down to Eddie Hearn, it's also the management of each fighter, the trainers of each fighter. They have a say on who the fighter is going to, go up against. Obviously, there's politics, and if they turn down certain fighters, certain fights, Eddie Hearn might be reluctant to give them dates, or give them the dates that they want in the future if they're trying to move their fighter slowly. So maybe there is pressure. But it's the same with many promoters. So, yeah, it's an interesting situation. At the moment, Matchroom is like Sparta. That's the best way I can describe it. It's survival of the fittest. It's sink or swim at Matchroom. And I think that pressure is coming from the top. I don't think it's Hearn who is behind this this particular method of bringing fighters through. I don't think it's Hearn. I think it's the Sky bosses are putting pressure on Hearn to deliver 50-50 fights and all this kind of business. And so Hearn is, pressuring the fighters on his books to move more quickly. I think that's what it is. It's pressure from the top. So yeah, anyway, let me know how you guys feel about this in the comment section below. Yeah, again, there's pros and cons to everything. The sink or swim situation is going to favor some fighters and not others. It is harsh, but there's a balance that you have to strike between providing entertainment for the fans and doing what's best for the fighter. You see, and this is the thing. Can you really continuously fill out cards with fighters who are in the learning process and all they're doing is knocking over journeymen, going rounds against tougher journeymen? I mean, can you do this for prolonged periods until guys are 20-0, 25-0, sticking them in there against journeymen every time? Are the fans going to accept that in this day and age? Are the fans going to be patient every time and let that process take place, and then let each fighter strategically have their careers planned out for them and then pick the weakest champion when they're ready to go for world? Do you understand what I'm saying? Are the fans going to be patient for that, or are they going to demand that fighters on the way up take risks? Are they going to accept the fact that fighters on the way up are going to lose fights because they're taking risks? Is that acceptable to a lot of fans? Or do they want absolute perfect management where the guy doesn't lose any fights up until he challenges for a world title, and that's the only time he's in a fight where he might actually lose? Is that what they want? You guys let me know in the comment section. It's happening, I'm out.
Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.